Mr. Arnold, seconded by Ms. Kirkland, moves that Bill C-221, an act to amend the Corrections and Conditional Release Act, Disclosure of Information to Victims, be now read a second time and referred to the Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security. Debate. The Honourable Member for Kamloops, Shuswap, Central Rockies.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today as the member for Kamloops, Shuswap, Central Rockies, and I thank the constituents for the trust they have vested in me to represent our region that is blessed with a rich history and endless splendor. Shuswap, Central Rockies would not be the great region that it is if not for the citizens that call the region home, and I'm honored to be their voice and advocate here in Parliament. Madam Speaker, Canadians invest their trust in us. And they expect and deserve a return on that investment. They look to Parliament and every member of this House and the other chamber to work collaboratively to deliver meaningful results for Canadians. And what kind of results do Canadians want? When I speak to the good people of Kamloops, Shuswap, Central Rockies, I'm told that citizens want affordability, opportunity, conservation, safety, and security. For safety and security, Canadians want laws and regulations that effectively denounce and deter crimes, and Parliament has work to do in this regard. Our fellow Canadians also tell me that they want transparency and accountability in government. When Parliament or a government entity makes a decision that directly impacts the lives of citizens, citizens appropriately expect transparency and accountability of how the decision was determined. Governments are meant to lead and to be led and administered by representatives chosen by Canadians, and it is important that Canadians be provided explanations of why decisions are made and how they're made. Transparency and accountability are core principles of our democracy, and the bill we debate today seeks to enhance the application of these essential principles, specifically for the benefit of victims by crime. Madam Speaker, I'm honored to be the sponsor of Bill C-221 that contains proposals identical to a bill introduced in previous parliaments. The proposals of this bill were proposed in the 44th Parliament by my friend and former colleague, Dr. Colin Carey, who served as the Honourable Member for Oshawa for over 20 years. Dr. Carey was inspired to champion the proposals of our bills by tragic events and pained experiences of a constituent of his, Ms. Lisa Freeman, whose father, Roland Slingerland, was brutally killed in Oshawa in 1991. Ms. Freeman's experiences were truly tragic. From the murder of her father, through numerous bail procedures, and the eventual release of her father's murderer, Ms. Freeman experienced years of stress, anxiety, and pain, some of which was caused by her uncertainty of the status of the man who murdered her father. We as parliamentarians must examine the experiences of victims of crime like Ms. Freeman and resolve to support legislative proposals that reduce the stress, anxiety, and other burdens that victims of crime live with. My honourable colleague, the new member for Oshawa, worked with Dr. Carey's bill in the last Parliament as a member of his staff and will also be speaking on C-221 today. I understand she will provide more context of Ms. Freeman's experiences that were the original inspiration for the proposals of this bill, and I thank her for her contributions and for being the seconder of this bill today. Madam Speaker, in the last Parliament, Dr. Carey's Bill C-320 progressed to a very advanced stage in the legislative process with unanimous support in all stages of review by both houses. In the last Parliament, C-320 passed committee review in the other place and was reported back to that chamber December 17, 2004, which was the last day that the 44th Parliament was convened. When the 44th Parliament was dissolved last March, C-320 died on the order paper, ending its path. but I have chosen to bring these proposals back because they need to be passed. The bill we examine today, C-221, contains the same proposals as C-320 did in the last Parliament. I hope that members of both houses may once again support these worthy proposals and work collaboratively and unanimously, as we did in the last Parliament, to move them to completion in this 45th Parliament. Madam Speaker, this bill, C-221, is aimed at supporting victims of crime. As such, it is important to expand on what is meant when we speak of victims of crime. This bill seeks to amend the Corrections and Conditional Release Act, and that act defines a victim as being, quote, an individual who has suffered physical or emotional harm, property damage, or economic loss as a result of the commission of an offense, end quote. By this definition, a victim is not just the person or persons who have directly suffered physical or emotional harm, property damage, or economic loss as a result of a crime. People who suffer emotional harm are also victims. When a criminal offense results in the taking of a life, yes, the individual whose life is taken is a victim. But the suffering mentioned in the definition of victim in the Corrections and Conditional Release Act does not end with the one who loses their life. The suffering includes those who experience emotional harm because of criminal behavior. These are also victims. This bill is important because it proposes to increase a victim's understanding of corrections and conditional release. Under current federal law, victims who share their contact details with the Correctional Service of Canada or the Parole Board of Canada and who fulfill the legal definition of victim are entitled to specific information about those responsible for harming them. This information includes key dates indicating when offenders may be eligible for review and release. Should this bill pass, it would amend the law to ensure that victims both know when offenders could be released and, importantly, be provided the reasons for how officials determined those eligibility dates. Victims of crime and their families seek clarity and transparency, and they deserve to have their voices heard within the justice system and to know the reasons behind release or parole. By providing victims of offenders more advanced information about crucial eligibility and review dates, this bill is aimed at providing the clarity and transparency that those victims seek. This legislation also lets victims know that we, as their elected representatives, hear them. As I mentioned earlier, the proposals of this bill were inspired by and advocated for by Ms. Lisa Freeman, who was victimized when her father was brutally murdered. Ms. Freeman suffered the exact kind of emotional harm that the Corrections and Conditional Release Act cites in defining the word victim. Crimes, especially that cause loss of human life, have a ripple effect, like a stone thrown in a pond that creates ripples of effect that emanate from the point of impact outward in all directions. There are many Canadians whose lives have been forever changed by emotional harm caused by criminal acts, especially crimes that take the life of a loved one. Madam Speaker, I am one of those Canadians, and yes, I have a sense of the stress, anxiety, and fear that victims like Lisa Freeman, her family, and others in similar situations experience when they are not provided an explanation as to why the individual who has traumatized their life forever is released. I have that sense of understanding because every time I have to drive past a local pub only a few kilometers from my home, I experience it. A pub built by an individual who had only a few years earlier killed my brother while driving impaired.
You got this, Mel.
My brother Rick was 17 when he was killed 47 years ago. And it still pains me every time I drive past that place that was built by the man who killed him. My mother and father and the rest of our family paid the great price for losing Rick and never knowing or understood how the person who took his life was released and seemingly continued his life as if nothing had happened. I've never spoken about this pain before, not even to family. Across Canada, there are victims of crime that live in fear of the release of the criminal who has caused much suffering and loss when the release occurs. Victims are not provided the reasons for the release. I have brought forward the proposals of this bill back to this Parliament for the many, many victims of crime across Canada who live with the burdens as victims of crime. When the proposals of this bill were debated and examined in the last Parliament, victims' rights advocates provided compelling testimony detailing how the passage of these proposals can support victims of crime, victims who already carry burdens. In the last Parliament, MPs and senators heard from the voices of victims and afforded the proposals unanimous support that carried these proposals very close to completion. The 44th Parliament came to an end. Now, in this 45th Parliament, every parliamentarian is faced with a new opportunity to once again listen to the voices of victims and move these proposals forward for the benefit of victims of crime in all 343 constituencies represented in this House. I wholeheartedly believe in this bill, and I hope every member of this House and the members of the committee that will study this bill and the members of the other chamber will once again recognize the merit of this bill, C-221. In this 45th Parliament, let us hear the voices of victims and act on their behalf as we did in the 44th Parliament. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments? There are none. Questions et commentaires?
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Salaberry-Soulanges. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I would like to congratulate my colleague. If we sit on a Friday, we have private members' bills that are based on personal experience and that are very touching. I'd like to thank my colleague for having tabled this bill, and I can assure him that he'll have the support of the bloc. But my question is, would it not be possible, in his opinion, to go a bit further in this bill, and that systematically families could be signed up to be informed, and not the opposite, where the family of the victim has to ask for the information? Would it not be easier just to have it a systematic system?
For Kamloops, Shuswap, Central Rockies.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for that thoughtful question. And I believe that having it automatically happen may also impose on the victims possibly rights or some victims may not want to know. To have it mandatorily imposed on them may cause more problems for some. I don't think it's a great burden for them to sign up, but at least they will be provided the details for the reason of the decisions if this bill passes. Thank you.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. And if I may just start off by complimenting my colleague across the way. I know at times it's very difficult to share a personal story. The loss of a brother, Rick, in this case, no doubt one can only imagine and have a great deal of sympathy, but unless you've lived through that experience, it's difficult to have that empathy. And so I do want to express my condolences. You could see the passion that the member speaks of, and I respect that. And I think that we need to look at victims, and I appreciate the legislation that the member has brought to the House, and I look forward to its passage to committee. And if he wanted to add anything else to his general comments, I would appreciate that too.
The Honourable Member for Kamloops, Shuswap, Central Rockies.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the Parliamentary Secretary for those comments. And I appreciate everyone that's here today listening, and the people back home. I'm not speaking just for myself. I'm speaking for the hundreds, thousands of victims out there. I can manage. You can tell it's emotional for me, but there's others that I think struggle with it far more than I do myself. And it's for those that we, as parliamentarians, must see this bill through to completion as soon as possible. Thank you.